All right, thank you all. So we are incredibly fortunate to have a member of the space enterprise join us today who's going to share with us perspectives from a very important role that he plays with the Space Force. And we had as a closing comment for these brief introductory remarks that General Olson, General John Olson, has been a member of AAS and in fact served on the American Astronautical Society board from 2014 to 2018. So he is one of us. So it's with tremendous appreciation that we welcome him back with us today. General Olson serves with Chief of Space Operations with the Space Force, and in particular is the U.S. Space Force lead for both JADC2 and ABMS, right? And for everyone who knows those acronyms, raise your hand, right? Excellent, right? The joint, the joint agency. Now I have to remember what the what. I've lost lock here, so apologize for that. But the Joint Area Defense Command and Control and the Advanced Battlefield Management System. He also has 5 degrees and a tremendous number of accomplishments, so many that we don't have the time to highlight them all, so we give time the general to share the information that he has brought to us. I do have one particular area, though, to highlight, which is the role that he's played with the Air Force as the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer. So he has tremendous experience in understanding the value of data and the value of being able to find those needles in the haystacks where they need to be found. General Olson, please join us.
Well, good afternoon. Boy, is it a pleasure and an honor to be here. And it's a just barely, but I tell you what, just in time does marvels. I just completed a couple 1,000-mile journey, and DC traffic was the slowest part of it. So after I got a rental car, which was an ordeal. But what a wonderful opportunity to do a little edutainment here. But it feels like it's among families. It's like a family reunion. So it is truly, as I said, a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. I've got a couple of thoughts. I see so many friends around the room, but this title slide is a little bit reflective of the challenge that I had. I couldn't really nail down a title. Competing to win in the 21st century is something I think is absolutely important, and I want to touch on that. And really, this is, yes, it's edutainment, but there's a call to action at the end of this. But it's also about partnering for prosperity, progress, and protection. And I think, yes, the alliteration plays, but when we look at the complex interdependency and the absolute synergy and symbiotic nature and interdependency there, it's really important. But, quite simply, it's about can-do leaders, all of which you are at every echelon, at every level, the richness and diversity of your tapestry of knowledge and experience, applying that to space and data and AI, because we are in the information age and we are in the space age. And I think our best days certainly are not behind us, but definitely ahead of us. And so that's what it's going to take for sustained success. So before I dive into it, do I have the clicker, or I just say next slide? We'll just go. Oh, I do have the clicker. Awesome. Down button. Flashback, you are not going to believe it, but 11 years, 1 hour, or 11 years, 1 day, and 1 hour, I was here speaking as the Director for Space and Aeronautics at OSTP. And these are the exact slides that I use. No kidding. But what I want to do is just use these as a quick scene setter and blast from the past to say, hey, when we look at the national space policy and we look at our priorities for prosperity, progress, and protection, that's a picture from the International Space Station in Washington, D.C. at night. And when you look at it, the core of my talk back then, which was right prior to lunch, I think that's the coveted spot right before and right after. But anyways, when we talk about balance and innovation and cooperation, it's really to unleash all those incredible attributes that space affords. But oops, I got to remember the down. But as we look at this, as we look at the areas, how unbelievably applicable they were 11 years and 1 day ago as they are today. When we talk about commercial and industrial talent bases, when we talk about international cooperation and what that means, when we talk about NASA's direction, whether it be science or human spaceflight and exploration or aeronautics, whether it be looking at Earth observation, weather and climate, resilience and mission assurance across the board. So, you get an idea that as awesome as this captured what the essence of the focus for the nation was 11 years ago, still very much true today. And as we look at it, I think in 2024, where we're really going to be in a polarizing, contentious, challenging, whether it's budget or politics or geostrategic dynamics, the truism of space is that bicameral, bipartisan, interagency, international, academic industry alignment, that's essential for our success. And it has been and it will be. And yet I think we're now in an area where U.S. leadership, along with our partners and allies, is so critically important in that. And so as we look at this dawn of a new era in the space enterprise, just take a look at that. As we look at the integration between civil, commercial, and national security, you'll see a big theme that carries forward when we talk about the harmony that needs to be between a balanced and affordable and an efficient portfolio of activities. When we talk about our research and technology breakthroughs and what it's going to take to unleash that affordability, that mission execution, that safety and surety. And when we talk about the challenges, they're the same ones that we had, but let's hope that we're 11 years more enlightened. Let's hope that we're able to apply those more fulsomely. And let's hope that together we can create a strong and enduring and a robust and a productive and a secure United States and the planet we live on and the humanity that inhabits it. So as we look at that, let's take a look at our 21st century, 2024 look at. We've got a tremendous set of cyber challenges. We've been through the COVID carryover drama and challenges. Of course, climate is ever pressing. And then across the spectrum of conflict, whether it be competition, crisis, or conflict, this is absolutely something that is top of mind. We've got the Ukraine war well past 2 years into it. But, much like Gulf War I was the first space war, if you will, quote unquote, I would proffer that for Ukraine, the unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's the first war of cognition. It's the first war where commercial capabilities have been the David and Goliath level, or have been the absolute differentiator between two very different and imbalanced forces. When you talk about just the names, these space commercial companies, if you throw out Starlink and Maxar, Capella and ICEYE and Umbra, those have transformed and continue to transform. Likewise, when we look at the Israel-Hamas challenges in the conflict there, you see the rapid use of new and different technologies. You see the challenges and scourge of terrorism. You see the human tolls at a macro scale. And likewise, as we look at climate change and the race for reusability and sustainability and robustness and resiliency, those are core terms, but they're absolutely essential to our viable solutions going forward. And it's really about harnessing the power of space and data and AI, because I think those in this information age are the key to unlocking everything. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I don't think that's a bunch of us space geeks all breathing our own exhaust. No, that is the true essence. And we see that in the Space Force. In fact, that's our very raison d'etre, and we'll talk about that further. But bottom line is space really enables the solutions as we go forward. But here's a little snapshot, a little tougher to read on the small screens, but the big ones. The key is when we look at the contributions to economic activity, space is incredible. But as we look at all of history, those big step function increases have all come by radical disruptive technologies. First we had the horse, and then we had the trains, and as we've advanced into IT, space logistics is going to unleash the next huge juggernaut. And that's absolutely true. And as you see the cost the cost per kilo for access to space, the richness and robustness of a competitive industrial base, not just a US-led industrial base, but a global industrial base at small, medium, large, and super heavy launch. So that's, I think, really exciting. When we look at it at a macro scale, there's a lot of investment going on, and the United States is indeed the big ball in the gym there. But it's much like pro football teams or pro baseball teams. You may have the biggest budget and the best roster, but you got to play as a team, and you got to play smart to win ball games and to win it all. And then when we look at it, we look at a tremendous new disruptive set of R&D investments from traditional and non-traditional and new and people that have never done space before, but now are tapping into the potential and the opportunity there. And really it's about adding new paradigms like dynamic space operations, which is enabled by sustained maneuver, looking at responsive space access, mobility, and logistics. We say in the military, rookies talk tactics, masters talk logistics. The true, Jedi masters talk space logistics, right? And so as we look at that hybrid space architecture, what does that really mean? It just means government and civil, US and international, interwoven, highly synergistic and resilient and robust. It's about these tools that are going to unlock further. And then, of course, you overlay, and last year was the big year of the large language model and artificial generative intelligence. But as we look at this year, now ChatGPT, we had Sam Altman saying yesterday, hey, it really kind of sucks, quote unquote, compared to GPT-5, right? And now we expect, it's just like, our iPhones or our phones. Look at how rapidly technology has advanced, but that's unleashing productivity and power and potential, but also new paradigms related to our teams and our people. So it wouldn't be replete being in this uniform without giving you a little snapshot of the Space Force. We're into our 4th year. We had our 4th birthday on the 20th of December. And, I think that just highlights how critical space and data are, how vital they are to every part of our life, whether it be our economic or our national security. Certainly, it's a $450 billion annual benefit to our economy, and that's expected to grow to $1 trillion plus as we tap the near space, the in-space economy, the cislunar capability. So, there's not a person among us who didn't check weather or pay for gas at the pump in your GPS timestamp synced credit card transaction or use maps to get here. Those are part of the everyday fabric of our life, but at the same time, they are equally important, as I already touched on, and we've seen in Ukraine, we've seen in Israel and Gaza. This is also part of our modern way of security, and that's here to change. So in the 21st century, security and prosperity absolutely depend on leadership in space. And so, the mission of the Space Force, quite simply, is to secure our nation's interest in, from, and to space. And what is space defined? 100 kilometers out to infinity. And of course, as you all know, the universe is expanding. So that means Buzz Lightyear has it right, to infinity and beyond. But, it's first about our people. We call them guardians, and I really like that name. I didn't at first, but boy, do I really love it now. And when we talk about space training and doctrine, it's about empowering and channeling and training that workforce. And it's also about leveraging the systems, the technology, and the capabilities. And what's the primary purpose? To protect our US and allied interests in space. And that can be pretty broad. Much like we protect sea lines of commerce and communication and do global power projection and establish a world order based upon rules and laws and respect for the rights of humanity. That is exactly what we're empowered and chartered to do in space. And it's a team sport. How do we do that? How do we achieve that mission? 3 primary lines of effort. First is develop and field capable and ready forces. The second is to amplify the guardian spirit. The guardian spirit is courage, connection, commitment. And so as we look at that, it's absolutely important. But the third one is the one I'm going to highlight here, and that's partner to win. That's partnering with industry, partnering with the interagency, partnering with the institutional community, whether it's the NGOs or academia. It's partnering with the international side and across that ecosystem. And We really think in a theory of success, no one wants kinetic conflict in space. No one. So our theory of success is competitive endurance. You know, as we look at the spectrum of conflict, it's competition, crisis, and conflict. But by very necessity, we have to preserve the capability to respond, but we absolutely want to deter, defend, guard, and do so in a way that benefits the long-term, safe, sustainable use and wonderful development and exploitation of space. So we are in a period of great can't talk here, a period of great power competition, GPC. And what does that require? It's collaboration of great people committed to a purpose. And that is what it's going to take going forward. So as we look at it, when we talk about pursuing space partnerships, this is important across the industry, across the interagency and the international side, as we've already talked about. You see it, we've welcomed a couple of new countries into NATO. But, you know, I was just in Norway last fall at Andoya Spaceport. We opened the first orbital launch complex which doesn't have land overflight in Europe. So that's an exciting thing. Of course, we've had the International Space Station, 16-member nation, 5 partners. We've got the ever-growing challenge of orbital debris and the challenges with traffic congestion, a lot more proliferated LEO constellations, and this will require even further enlightened space traffic management and prudent operations. Of course, the Artemis Accords have been very successful. And we keep adding countries that just highlights the importance of that. And finally, that term that's a really tough one, combined joint all-domain command and control. That is the ability to sense, make sense, and act in all the domains, particularly leveraging space. And so that is a really tough challenge. It's like the system of everything. And yet, when we look at it, it's really the greatest solution to achieving success with the system of systems is starting with a nascent system that works and then building out with a smart, committed set of collaborating, cooperating people. And that's exactly what it's about. But, you know, perspectives matter. People matter, right? This is the view from Artemis 1, looking back at the Earth. You've got Advanced Space's capstone, first commercial return to the cislunar environment. Super awesome. You also have Intuitive Machines, IM-1 there, taking a snapshot back. This is just the beginning. And I'm so proud of those industry, NASA, through the CLIPS programs, partnerships. But it's all just the very beginning. So it's super exciting. And as we look at that, the future of our operational needs is really about robust, responsive, rapid, resilient. And in many ways, sure, it's evolutionary, but we got to have some revolutionary changes because of the numbers. And these are the solutions to deliver mission success at the speed of need. Sounds colloquial, but that's exactly what we need to do, because as we look at the vision of space going forward, it's absolutely is and going to be a catalyst for U.S. and allied prosperity and protection. And when I look at the potential opportunities, yes, in space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, or as we call it in the military, space access, mobility, and logistics, SAML. It's just a subset, just a little different terminology to align with joint doctrine. But when we look at what's afforded by dynamic space operations or sustained maneuver, it's incredible. But it's not just geo and below. When we look out, I like to use the analogy of the blue water and the brown water Navy. The blue water is the power projection, is the soft power and influence, is the sea lines of commerce and communication and protection. The littoral brown water Navy, I consider that in the Space Force analogy, geosynchronous orbit and lower. The blue water Space Force is cislunar, Lagrange points, all the exquisite orbits. When we look at the surface of the moon, when we look out to the asteroids, when we look out to Mars, Phobos and Deimos and beyond, you know, the neatest thing about being here with the kind of the number one theme, 11 years, 1 day and 1 hour from when I last gave this pitch, is that to be number one, where there is a first mover advantage, where there is a critical benefit to shaping a world order, a vision of the future that is enlightened by the rule of law and by treating humankind in a good manner. I think this is really important for us to lead. And so as we look at that vision, throughout all of history, we've had to protect where commerce and discovery and exploration has gone. And that will be ever more true going forward. But it's these hybrid space architectures, it's ISAM and SAML that will help launch that future of space. And ultimately, whether it's science, whether it's exploration, whether it's security, it is that fundamental principle of first, we got to know the environment. We got to have the know-how. We got to go. We got to do. We got to grow that ever more increasing. And then we got to be, we got to protect it. And we got to be pros at doing that operation and continually evolve in an enlightened way. And so, my friends, that brings me to the second to the last slide. We need can-do leadership to be number one. Can-do leadership in space is absolutely essential, critical, and imperative. What is that? We need to cooperate. We need to accelerate. And we need to do it now in order to deliver outcomes. Because there is no E for effort, no participation trophy. And each and every single one of you is absolutely critical to that. You are the leaders. You are the people who will harness the richness and diversity of our nation, of our industrial base, of our intellect, of our entrepreneurship, of our diversity and richness. And when we do that, just like we were the first to the race in large language models with ChatGPT, despite civil military fusion and command direction and lots of money being spent, that shows the path in space and data and AI. And so with that, I leave you that winning in the 21st century is about space and cooperation, and that will leave us with nothing but enduring success. We can do this if we do it together. Let's bring it strong and get her done. And my charge to you is let's do it together. Thank you. So I think we may have time for questions, correct? And I'm fair game for anything because you are the smartest, most good-looking and awesome people on the planet. So bring it. No softballs, because who wants softballs at lunch, right? Go for the tough ones.
So what I'm going to ask is, if you do have a question, just raise your hand, shout it out, and General, if you could just repeat it shortly, for everybody here.
Sure, you bet.
So
we'll do high-speed, low-drag lightning rounds, so we get lots of them in. Ladies first. Okay, go.
Oh, okay. So can you talk a little bit about the militarization of space and civil space and kind of the position that we're in, having a truly civil organization and the other side of the organization, which is not really true of other countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. The NASA Authorization Act of 1958 set aside a civil agency to pursue those missions for the benefit of the nation and the world. And we've really segregated in a lot of ways those missions, although there's such strong synergy across. And so we cooperate at many levels. In the Department of Defense, one of our policies is we absolutely, in the XGO and the cislunar side, we want NASA and we want the commercial community to lead, because we don't want to lead to a militarization of space. In fact, we want to create that pathway forward based on science and exploration and discovery. But we're also very pragmatic. We know that we must be smart and plan, and we must have space domain awareness. And so we are trying to do that in an enlightened, smart, policy-driven way. It's a broad discourse. It's a community. And that's the beauty of our nation is open, passionate discourse. Leading to enlightened pathways is how we do it. And it's messy, but I think we have to do that in a way. We've become also very polarized too. And so I think we need to be very open-minded. And I think that's the beauty of AAS, the beautiful part of Goddard Space Symposium, is we bring together so many people And this is exactly the kind of forum to do that. So thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good seeing you. You've got a great perspective and background across the entire space community. You look at it, what would you say is the number one area that's not good?
Well, if you want my personal opinion, I was born in 1969. I can't believe we're not back with people on the moon yet. That surprises me. I'm also surprised that we haven't, launch is incredibly well funded. There's a lot of competitors. I see the incredible next wave being the in-space economy, and I don't think we've tapped that enough. I think we have had the convergence of technology and policy and people and visionaries and tech capabilities. I'm ready and looking forward to that. I think there's some challenges when we look at space traffic management, when we look at the existential challenges of climate, when we have people who say, well, why should we invest in space or the broader ecosystem rather than just on people and the Earth? Every dollar and every reason that we are in space is for the benefit of the planet Earth and humanity and the rich biodiverse ecosystem that we have. So I think it's if we look at it in this perspective, the Wright brothers first flew in 1903 and we landed on the moon in 1969. Okay, let's fast forward from 69 or 72 if you take the last mission. Are we where we should be given the rate and pace of technology and information, data and information? No, I don't think so. So that's up to us. And, I'm kind of, I have been blessed with a rich and really interesting, I started out in the Air Force. After I went to the Air Force Academy, I left and went to NASA for a decade, stayed in the Air Force Reserves, got to go be the director for space and aeronautics at OSTP, went to industry for a decade. And then we launched the first new service in 75 years, the Space Force. And who could not come and be a part of that? Got to be the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, our first Chief Data and AI Officer for the Air and Space Force, some things that are so awesome. But, I'm going to retire this August of 2024, 36 years. But life is not over there. I am getting ready to rip and roar back in the industry side. And yet it takes each one of us doing our parts. But this is such an awesome area, such a compelling thing. And so if you take nothing out of this, your can-do leadership, your passion, your potency of intellect and pursuit is what will drive that progress. And we'll get there. I see a hockey stick ahead. And I think change is the only constant here. And boy, our lives are getting freaky fast. But it's going to be an incredible future with all these things converging. And we do futures assessments. We've had 3 or 4 of them in the Space Force now. I'm not even sure how you do that anymore, given the rate and pace. So it's an awesome time to be alive. And each one of us in our age state development and our leg of the journey has something to do and contribute. And so that's how I'd answer that. Thank you.
One more.
Sure. Go ahead, man.
Or just shout it out.
I can shout loud. My question to you talked a lot about the space economy, and in your figures you've mentioned like lunar mining and asteroid mining. Are there plans to ensure that this work is done sustainably to preserve these spaces for research and for future generations?
Yeah, I think that's critical and it's absolutely essential. And that comes with prudent prior planning, right? And we've got to do that. I mean, in my civilian side, I'm a co-founder of a company called Anthropogenics. So that is, the human impact on the planet. It is very much focused on that. So I'm hopefully you saw several words of sustainability in there, and I believe with the fulsomeness that truly encompasses that we need to have very prudent planning, very vigorous dialogue, very smart and well-intentioned plans. But I think we can do it all, and we can do it right. But it doesn't happen by accident, and hope is not a strategy. We got more. Yes, sir. Go ahead. You can just shout it out. Yeah. I'll say it again if it's not loud enough.
You mentioned space race 2.0.
Yeah.
With China leading that in.
Yeah. Also, I forgot industry 4.0 and you know, data and AI, you know, ground zero explosion right now. So
Soft, maybe not.
Okay.
So how do you see this space race evolving and possibly shifting how the U.S. government is funding space work, maybe away from what NASA is traditionally doing to things that are more aligned with we need to win this space race?
That's a complex question. Here's my attempt at it. And I'll throw in an interesting factoid, just for fun. So the way I look at it is a whole of nation. It's not a whole of government, certainly not. It's a whole of nation. It's actually a whole of like-minded partners and allies, you know, approach to this. But as we do that, I absolutely think right now we have some very different paradigms. We almost have a polar set of paradigms about approaches across the whole philosophical realm between the U.S. and perhaps Russia plus China plus North Korea. And I think if one is objective about that, you know, in the business sense, much like we do in the government sense, we have to talk about the strategy and the mission and the alignment of resources to achieve that. In business, that's the difference between life or death, right? And as we look at that, I think we need to be very pragmatic. I think we need to be reflective about the fact that there is a first mover advantage here. I think there's incredible standards and norms and behaviors, much like English is the language of the International Civil Aviation Organization. If you're an air traffic controller or a pilot anywhere in the world, the common language is English. I believe there's huge benefits to having space traffic management, the language of the world, being English for that, because I think it is part of that. Similarly, much like standards for data and AI or 5G or next G or 6G, you know, those are really important drivers. So I think that's good. When I look at this nationally, here's the factoid. The Space Force is really small. We have 16,500 people total. Half of those are military, half are civilians. Of the military, half are officer and half are enlisted. It's the first service born digital. But it's still very small, but we're the newest service, again, just 4 1/4 or 4 1/3 years old here. But here's a picture for you. Having come from business before I came back to do government, I put together 6 billion-dollar plus companies into a single aegis. Why? So you don't have that broad corporate structure, reduce your O&M costs, you get unity of command, unity of alignment. And I also use other examples in the government. You know, I'll just pick one that's not in the Space Force. If you look at the National Reconnaissance Office out in Chantilly, you've got 4 towers that are really kind of separate tribes or cultures or mission oriented, but they're all part of the NRO and they work together. Here's a little idea for you. The next smallest service, the U.S. Marine Corps. Just hold that thought. If we took NASA plus Space Force plus NOAA, plus FAA, AS&T, plus U.S. Department of Commerce Office of Space Commercialization, and every other cat and dog space, let's even throw MDA in there, Missile Defense Agency, let's throw NGA, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, let's throw the NRO, let's throw the whole intelligence community that's tied to space, and by the way, the Space Force is the 18th Space Intelligence Agency. You put those all together, they'd be 1/2 the size of the Marine Corps. And we could call that the national space effort. You'd have separate different missions. You'd have different Title 10, Title 50, Title 32. You'd have civil, you'd have environmental, you'd have security, you'd have a whole portfolio. But you'd leverage a much more common synergistic thing. Now, would industry do that? Probably. Are we able to do that in the government? Well, geez, that blows the minds of our appropriators and our oversight committees, and that's just an undoable do. But is that really an undoable do? And is that not the kind of thinking, just even back of the envelope or while we're all having a beverage, sitting around talking about, is that not worthy of the discussion? To your very point, how do we have to evolve? How do we have to be more disruptive? How do we have to move faster? How do we have to get out of our bureaucratic ruts? How do we get out of the, we've always done it this way, or we need to do it this way? If you align mission and pathways there in a resource constrained environment, it compels one to do that. Now, in this uniform, people go crazy when you talk like that. And so I'm doing it as a thought provocation piece, but also I'm doing it to say, it's the people in this room, in this organization, in these kind of fora, that will help us say, not just why, but why not? One more. Yes, sir.
So like historically in any sort of conflict, there's always been some kind of etiquette. Like especially after the start of First Cold War, we had like no shooting nukes. That was the final one, right? So as the competition in the space is heating up, what do you see as like a possible framework for like a bottom line when it comes to competition? And how do you plan to, or I mean, like, how do you think the U.S. Government will plan to like draw this common set of bottom lines with all other competition? And let me just get some like ideas and examples. For example, like imagine the future space battleship. We have like lasers, but more importantly, nuclear weapons possibly, kinetic kill vehicles and such. So like, will there be a certain limit for like in lower orbit not to start a whole Kessler syndrome, or will there be like guidelines for not accidentally shooting missiles into Earth's atmosphere? And so, and also like, how do you communicate that?
Let's competition. You've asked the question, right?
So that is a pretty multifaceted, huge question. So I'll answer it simply this. You know, as we look at the grand strategy, you know, if I reflect back to from the time at the White House, the president of the United States really looks at security, the economy, jobs, healthcare, the environment, the big grand strategy, existential things. Everything else flows down from that through strategy, through mission, through doctrine, through programs and effort. The key here is the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 and its amendments. That's the last major body of international treaty and law, and we are a signatory of that, and we follow it, and we believe in it. We did not sign the Moon Treaty. And ironically, 1967 was that last major body of international body and work. So that also says that it's not just scientists, technologists, engineers, and mathematicians, STEM people. It's the STEAM people. It's the lawyers. It's the policy people. It's the interactors. It's the business people who do global business. It's the people who are all committed to forging those kind of thoughts, those kind of discussions, those kind of actions. So that's, you know, that's a more generic answer, but that's a really beyond the scope of what I could answer here. But I think that helps provide really important context. And I would say it also highlights that to the first question or second question over here, we're late. I can't believe we haven't done better in that. So let's not lament that. Let's get after it. Thank you very much.